Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte, episode 73, I think, 72, 73, I think. Oh, that's a lot. Welcome everyone to this installment of This Week in Svelte. Today, you already got a bit of a spoiler of what we will talk about. There will be a community showcase that is very, I care about. But we will also talk about the changelog, which is not very rich, Alice. And we will talk about database solutions, which, by the way, I am not super expert in, and I probably should have prepared a bit better. So you will get my very honest feedback about it. There are multiple database solutions. I will talk a bit about the differences between the various solutions, but take it with a grain of salt, because I'm not the database expert. So let's jump right into it with the changelog. So as you can see, we have very few releases. This is there is a double symptoms here. One is that there are very I am kind of following the repo all the time, looking for issues and stuff like that. So there have been fewer and fewer issues, which is a good thing, because this means that Svelte 5 is really solidifying. There are the few issues that we get are really edge cases, really things that is not as it's not very common to encounter. So it's a good thing. So let's see actually what we got. We have a couple of feature here. This is actually it's pretty interesting, because some times ago we actually got the CSS injected compiler option, and you can look at it yourself here. So if you have some CSS, so let's say that we have style, I can say that button has background color of FF3E00, which is the Svelte gray. Not gray, the Svelte orange. Let's remove the border 0, border radius 0.5 rem. Let's give it a bit of padding of 0.5 rem. Yeah, it's a nice button, right? Now, by default, also controversial topic. Are you for cursor pointer on buttons or not? Because on one end, this gives you a click, you know that you can click on it. But if you take a look at buttons in the, for example, in macOS buttons, they actually show the normal cursor. So, and buttons by default show the normal cursor. So, is it really a good thing to put a pointer clicker? I don't know. Up to questions. But let's look at the JS output here. So by default, when you compile a component, basically, you are basically honestly, I don't know how it works specifically, because before, when you try to render a component, for example, you were getting the CSS as a specific module of the output, and now I think this thing actually changed, and so you don't get it anymore, and you don't need to worry about it, because either SvelteKit, Vite plugin Svelte, will actually take care of this. I actually did investigate about how it does it, but there was still some reason to want it to have for the user of the component to have the CSS separately. in like, because they maybe want to use it for a different thing, because they want to build their own build pipeline, or like the actual use case is, let's say that you want to use a Svelte component as OG image generator. You actually need that CSS separately. So some times ago, it was introduced this CSS injected compiler option. So that basically when you do, if you look at the output, when you do injected, you can see that there is this new CSS variable. It gives you the hash, it gives you the background color and stuff like that, and then it says append styles here to the app, basically. And if you look at the server render of it, it's still adding the CSS to the payload. The payload is what you will be getting out of it. So in the end, basically, you will get the whole CSS of the whole component tree, which is cool. But this basically was initially just as a compiler option. And this means that, let's say that you have your SvelteKit app, and you want to just one single component use it for the OG image generation. Basically, you need to change that Svelte component to use CSS injected, but only that single component and not the rest. You can actually do that because in SvelteKit you can use Vite plugin dynamic compile option, and dynamic compile option is a function, and you can specify the compile option for each specific component based on the file name. So you can say literally, if a file name ends with ogimage.svelte, then add CSS injected. But it was a bit obnoxious to do. And so now it's much easier because you can just do Svelte options, CSS injected. Now, and as you can see, like now I'm actually using external here, but the CSS is still injected because of this Svelte option here. One thing to note is that there's no CSS external here, so this will error out external. This will error out because it makes no sense to have one single component to decide if the CSS is external. So there's no reason to have a single external CSS for one component in the component tree, while the opposite, it's interesting for the OG use case. So you can do injected, but you will get an error otherwise. So yeah, that's an interesting bit. There was a small bug that was fixed, and basically, if you take a look at the repo, like let's say that you want to do something like this. So you have show count, that is a function that show the count and the string that you pass in. You could, in theory, call these as a target template literal. I don't know if you know about this. This syntax, but basically, that's too complex. So let's simplify everything. Sorry. So we have our count. So let's do let count equal state. We have our derived show count. We have our increment. Let me simplify things. Is also like the reporter of this bug did an excellent job, because he also linked to the documentation of the target template literal in JavaScript. But basically, it's very simple. Whenever you have a function, in this case, show count, you can make it accept a string and then a list of parameters. And basically, you can call it just like a function. So you can do show count with count. And so this will, yeah, I need to do this. Object is not defined. Yeah, okay. Count. So show count, you can pass in whatever string you want, my string, and this will show the count and my string. So the problem was that if you're calling this, like if you have a function like this, you can also call it like this. And you might have seen something like this, for example, for CSS in JS solutions, where you can do basically CSS and then you do something like this. And this is like the way you call the function. This CSS is just basically a function. So if we define a function called CSS that accepts a string, CSS string, which is a string, we can literally call this function CSS, and whatever things you pass in, it will be passed as a CSS string. And the important bit is that you actually get pieces of string. So it's pretty interesting. Like you get the main string, and then you get a series of all the pieces where you are injecting something, because that's a template literal. So you can just do, for example, 42. So I just want to log, like if you do rest, let's say it's any like this. If we log console log CSS string and rest, you can see that whenever we call this function, what we get is an array of strings, which is the first, like here's something, yeah. As you can see, you are getting an array of strings. So this is actually not a single string, but it's an array of string. You're getting an array of string up to this point. Then you're getting an array of all the values that you're passing in this case is 42, and then an array of string for the rest of the code. So what you can do is basically like you pick one string and one value, one string and one value, and you can recompute the whole thing. But most importantly, what you can do is actually, because that's just the behavior of a normal string interpolation, you can actually return whatever you want. Like you can uppercase every second bit of the string and then subtract one for every value. I don't know, like, but it's something interesting. And the gist of it is that by default, this was not reactive. So if you called show count like this, it should work. And now it actually works, but before it wasn't working. So that's some small quirk of, so let's go back to Svelte Changelog. So this was one of the fixes. We have a new release, which is avoid recreating handlers for components events. This is also interesting. This is probably performance-wise. Call correct event handler for properties of non-reactive object. I didn't actually take a look at this, but yeah. Again, we are getting less issues, and most importantly, maintainers are actually on vacation. So they are taking some well-reserved rest before the final push to Svelte 5. Let's see if SvelteKit has some release, and it actually has. Set revalidate cache header on 404 the static asset, which is interesting. So basically, I think like is forcing, like if you are accessing a static asset and you get a 404, is actually setting a cache header of revalidate so that if it changes, the browser will not stick with the 404 static asset. And there's also a publish of Vite plugin Svelte, ensure consistent use of compile option.html, also for pre-bundling, which is also interesting. So a very small changelog. We have also, and you might already see it, but there is an announcement. So I will bother you for the next month or two for this announcement, but we will have on October 19, 2024, Svelte Summit Fall. So you can currently submit a talk. So if you want to talk at Svelte Summit, if you have something that you have worked on in Svelte, if you want to tell your story, like how are you using Svelte in production, how do you plan to convert to Svelte 5, I don't know, whatever funny idea you have for a talk, feel free to submit a talk. You can just log in with GitHub and submit your talk. And now let me see. So there is wondering if CSS injector compiler option should fix questionable inline directives to make CSP work. Okay, I literally hate CSP because working with CSP and setting the correct CSP is a pain. Like, it's probably even worse than regex for me. Actually, it's much worse than regex for me. But I don't think it's Svelte responsibility to fix the CSP inline directives, because it will be pretty bad if just by setting a Svelte option CSS inject, it should allow inline CSS everywhere, because this also means that if you don't want to use CSS inject and maybe you're using a library that is using CSS inject, you might get some CSP that you don't like. And for those who doesn't know, CSP is content security policy, and it's a real pain because I want to show you CSP content security policy. So the content security policy is basically something that you can enable. It's a header, and basically, it's a meta tag that you can specify, and this basically allows the browser to deny some certain type of requests. For example, this content security policy is saying that for default source, so if you want to have I can't even remember, but for example, this is telling that every source image, so every source attribute of the image tag needs to start with HTTPS. So if you try to have an image tag with an HTTP, it doesn't work. It doesn't load the image. This is telling that you can even have, I think this is for iframes, I guess. So this is obviously it's a pain, but it has an advantage. You could, in theory, create a good CSP so that you can only include scripts that come from your website, and you can only include scripts that comes from a specific CDN that you know that you will load, for example. And you can even disallow executing inline script. So I don't know if they have an example. It's this kind of a mess. For example, script source is userscript.example.com. So this means that only script from userscript.example.com will be able to load. But you can even, let me see if they have something interesting. You can report to an endpoint, very interesting. But basically, like, the whole thing is that writing a CSP by hand that also allow you to have like an open enough CSP is very difficult, because the moment you add a CSP, it's basically like strict by default. So every time I had to deal with CSP, I literally battled for hours against it. But it's definitely something worth learning, because again, it can really mitigate the risk of cross-site scripting and stuff like that. So yeah, take a look at it. And let's move now to something that I want to show you. Like, this showcase today is my showcase. So and by the way, like, I'm doing this not because I am the host and I will take advantage of it. No, I'm doing this because there was no one in the queue to showcase something. So I said, okay, let's show something that I did. And this means that if you have something to showcase, please reach out to me, because like, I will be very happy to showcase your work in this week in Svelte. So let's talk about what I will showcase you today. And what I will showcase to you is, I will showcase OptimistiKit. OptimistiKit, as the name suggests, is a mix of Optimistic and SvelteKit, and basically is a way to use Optimistic UI in SvelteKit, probably in an easier way that you should do. So I was preparing this this example. And I actually think I broke everything. Let me see. Oh gosh. PMI. Let me try to install again. PMI OptimistiKit at latest. This should be less annoying. So I was preparing this example, but I think let me do this. I think before we talk about what, come on, sorry. If this doesn't work, I will just restart from scratch. Yeah, okay. I need to start from scratch. So let me copy this. Let me open a new Svelte lab. So I was preparing something, but we will do everything from scratch, which is much nicer. So first thing first, like, this work with Svelte 5. So currently, like, the main publishing line of OptimistiKit is actually running on Svelte 5. So if you want to use it, you need Svelte 5. There is a legacy, so if you are still on Svelte 4, you can do npm I OptimistiKit at legacy to install the store version, so that you can use it in Svelte 4, but it's much better to use Svelte 5 if you can. So let me install OptimistiKit at latest. I hope it doesn't break. Okay, let me also update Svelte to the latest version, just for to be sure, and Vite plugin Svelte to the latest. I think I need to force. Okay, we are good to go. So npm run dev. So we should have a basic hello world here. Let's actually start by building something. So I will actually copy from here. So let's say that we have this very cool server. It's a pretty easy server. Like, it has a list of comments, which is a string array, and the load function is just returning the comments and the likes. We have a couple of actions. In this action, we are actually getting the data from the request, getting the comment. I didn't bother with like validation and stuff like that. You should definitely do it in your project. Then it's a waiting 2000 seconds just for the sake of it, and then it's pushing this in the list of comments. Same thing for the likes, is just updating the likes like this, and after waiting for 2000 seconds. Let's update the page now, because that's also an important bit. And as I've said, initially, I wanted to show you how to do it the wrong way and explain why it was the wrong way. But building this example, I actually realized that the wrong way is actually not working in Svelte 5, luckily. So let's just go over, like, first thing first, let's see this very basic implementation, how it works. So this is showing all the comments, and actually let's move it below the two forms. Showing all the comments. So I can add a comment, like, I love this week in Svelte. Now, if I send, obviously the server is very slow, so it takes a couple of seconds to actually refresh. Same thing with the likes. Like, if I click, a couple of seconds, and then I will get the updated amount of like. Now, what is Optimistic UI? Optimistic UI is something where basically you are confident that your server will not mess up. And so what you do is, like, it's kind of a waste for the user having to wait this much time just so that you can actually use this thing. So one way to do it, in Svelte 4, you could directly update data, and you will get actually an update value. So you could use enhance. So let's do it with data.likes. So I'm printing data.likes. So what you can do is, when usenance runs, you know that the server will update the like count. And so instead of waiting for the server, you could just do data.likes ++. So by doing this, in theory, what should happen is that when you click here, data.likes actually update immediately. It's not happening, so we need to fix it. And then when the server reloads the page, then you will get, like, in sync with the server, and it's probably and at that point you are in sync, so it's fine, it's done. Now, this doesn't work right now. We could probably find a way to make it work. So let's say, for example, that we have a state like fake optimistic likes. This is state is null in the beginning, and here what we want to show is we want to show optimistic likes or data.like. So what you can do now is we can say optimistic like ++. Actually, the optimistic like is equal to optimistic likes or data.likes +1. And we should probably tell that this is state is number or null. So by doing this, this should work. So the moment I click, I get the update. Now, what we should also do is when we should return something from the enhance function, a function from the enhance function, so that we get back the result. So when we get back, we should do optimistic likes is equal to null. So by doing this, we kind of did the optimistic UI thing, because as you can see, like I refresh the page, like my likes count is 9. I can click. Oh, they optimized the value, so we get to start over. But so I can click and I immediately get a new value. This is also kind of wrong. So if I refresh the page, I'm getting 5. Yeah, as you can see, like it's kind of buggy. Refresh the page. I don't know why it's going back to that number. Maybe I should say, oh, I think I need to do update, and then I need to await. I think await update, and then optimistic like now. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, as you can see, like getting optimistic update right is not that easy because like for one, it's probably working fine. And this is kind of a spoiler of what I was about to tell you, but I'm used to test optimistic UI this way, so I kind of spoiled it. Like if I click one time, it's actually kind of right, because like it's updating optimistic like, then is when this is going back, is like nullifying this, and so now it's showing data.likes. And this is probably fine, because now I can refresh, I can click one time, and it works. But again, as you can see, as soon as you try to introduce multiple kind of stuff like this, now you get a very bad behavior, because you go up to 18, then you go back to 13, and then it's slowly ramping up. So yeah, it's not easy to get it right, and it's a lot of work. Every time you need to redo this kind of work to make it work. So it's doable. It's not easy. It's not pretty. So that's why I did come up with another way of doing it. So with OptimistiKit, what you can do is you can import OptimistiKit from OptimistiKit. Okay, we now have this OptimistiKit function. What we can do with this OptimistiKit function is actually we can pass data to this optimistic function. So we can do const is equal to OptimistiKit, and now we need to pass data to this OptimistiKit function. Since we are using data everywhere, so let me actually remove these for the moment. So okay, we can go back to, yeah, I need to pass this. We need to pass data. Since we are using data everywhere to display the information, let's rename it to, I don't know, pessimistic data. So I can pass this into OptimistiKit. And I can't even remember. Oh, I need to pass a function, sorry. Because like this needs to persist reactivity. Now, you can pass a function to that returns your data, basically. And what OptimistiKit returns to you is an enhance function and a new data. So instead of using enhance from $apps/forms, you can use the enhance function from OptimistiKit. And this kind of requires you to have a function, because the function that you need to pass is actually the function that will define the optimistic behavior. So in this case, I need to get, like, what you get is you get data from as the first argument, and the second argument is actually the same argument of the form. So let's first show with likes, because it's easier. So with data, I get data back, and here I can literally just do data.likes plus plus. Just by doing this, so I use the enhance function from OptimistiKit. Instead of using the data that I get as a prop, I use the data that I get back from OptimistiKit. And just by doing this, I can actually get the optimistic UI. Now, this works, as you can see. Like, I am like raising the count, and if I refresh the page, it's still correct. There's still a bit of a thing that is missing, but let's start implementing the comments first. And then I will talk to you about another advantage of OptimistiKit and another reason why you want to use OptimistiKit over build it yourself. So we can actually remove optimistic likes for the moment, because we are not actually using it anymore. Let's implement the commenting. So what we need to do is, in the function, you also get the same parameters that you get from the enhance function. So you get form data. And with this form data, you can basically replicate what you are doing here. So here, I'm doing const data request form data, then I get data.get comment. It's awaiting this, and it's pushing this to a list of comment. So I need to basically do the same thing on the client, because I want to do it. Optimistically. So I will do comment. We'll do const comment is equal form data dot get comment. And if comment, just to please TypeScript, I will actually do data dot comments dot push comment. So as you can see, it's very, I need to string it probably. Dot toString, because TypeScript is mad at me. So as you can see, it's very declarative. You are just getting the comment and pushing it to the comment array. And by doing this, what you get is that I can write a comment, and it immediately loads. Now, there's also, like, you also get the form element here. So you can actually do form element, and you can actually do form element dot reset to actually reset your form, so that you actually get the correct behavior. So another comment, cool. As you can see, like, I get to write really fast, and if I refresh the page, this is actually in sync with the server. So we can add some log to the server. So let's say const updating, console.log updating comments, so that we can actually see when it's updating comments. So now we touched the server, so the HMR actually blew out all our state. But if we go back to the plus page.server, so a comment, another, as you can see, now it's updating comments, and now these comments on the client are actually the same one that you have on the server, for sure. Because, I mean, in theory, it could break sometimes. So if it breaks, obviously you will get some content shift because you are optimistically update the client by saying, okay, I trust the server, I know that this will not fail. Obviously, like, it can happen, so you should probably find also a way to determine if something if something failed, you should probably find a way to show it on the page, for example, for a little more, say this was not updated and stuff like that. But the power of this library, does it provide a provision to show some indicator that the comments is pending? This is actually something that, is actually something that I plan to add, and I think I have to be sure. I can't remember if I already added something like this, but it's definitely something that I want to add, so that I can actually basically, like, you should be able to say this is just on the client and is not actually back from the server. So it's definitely something that I plan to add to the library. So for the moment, what the library helps you to do is actually do this in a very elegant way. And there's also something else that it helps you to do. Now, for doing this, we need to show the network request, because I want to show you something. So let's say that I click this like. As you can see, like, this like request is going out and is like reaching the server, and the browser is listening for the response of that request. And this is kind of a bad behavior for an internet citizen. Because what you should really do, especially in cases like this, is if you know that this thing is actually updating one single resource on the server, like there is only one like count, what you should really do is actually delete, like cancel every in-flight request if a new one comes out. To do this, you actually can do it very easily with data key. So by specifying a data key, in this case, you can say that the key of this form is likes. And now, if you take a look at old requests, if I update multiple times, every time I update, all the old requests are canceled. So this means that the browser basically discard completely that request, because at the end of the day, like, that request is not actually something that we are interested in, because we know that the second time that you click like, the same request already has a different value. So this is another thing, but there's also another thing where things are a bit easier, and it's when you have a form inside a component. So if you have a new file, which is my form, for example, .svelte. So let's say that you are using this inside your form. Let's copy the, the comment form here. So obviously here you will have to normally, like, you will have to pass the data in, get a callback to update the data, which is pretty annoying. With OptimistiKit, you can actually do this. Like, you can import OptimistiKit, you can import get action. I can't remember. Yeah, get action. Okay. So get action is a function that you can call to get the enhance function. So you can do enhance is equal to get action. Now, if you want, as you can see, like, you are getting some error here, and the reason why you're getting some error is because like, this action has actually, like, for this action to work, you need to pass a type, you can actually import from SvelteKit. So you can do like these types. So if your form is next to your plus page.svelte, you can import page data. And so if you import page data, you can pass it to this action like this. And now this should be getting, oh, I need lang equal TypeScript. Yeah, import type page data. Okay, this should work the same. I don't know why it's getting this error. I might need to look into it. But the point is, regardless, you get the same behavior here in my form. So I could, in theory, remove all of this, and I will comment this out. I could import my form from my form.svelte, and I could just use my form. And now this should work the same, basically. I hope, because the errors are kind of maybe like, obviously, like it's a demo. So let me try. From inner component. Yes, it works anyway. So this is another kind of superpower of OptimistiKit. The fact that basically, I wiped out our DB, but the point is, inside my form, you can actually get the same behavior just by getting the enhance function with getAction. And you don't have to worry about like passing the data in or passing a callback so that you can actually update the data. Like this enhance function is the magic behind all of that. And you can just use this enhance function inside any component, just like you would inside your plus page.svelte. So that was it. I hope you liked it. If you have any suggestion, feel free to reach out. This is the repository. I will post it here. If you want to give it a star, but even better, like if you want to contribute, even just with some issues, if you want to take a look at this library, I will be very happy if you open an issue, and I will try to fix it for you. So this was my showcase. So I will now hide my screen, because we are now at the next part of this week in Svelte. And if you follow if you followed the thumbnail, what we are gonna talk now is a discussion. So again, feel free to write something in the chat if you want to participate in the discussion. And if you want to talk live, actually, I will actually post the StreamYard link to you, so that you can actually, if you want to join, I will put you on stage and we can talk about it. So we're going to talk about databases. Specifically, we're going to talk about what kind of database there is, like what choice do I have. Now, there are multiple databases available, and each one is generally like for a different target. So depending on what's your application, you will likely need a different kind of database. I think the most common one, also because it came from basically included with WordPress. So I think if you go and look in the web, the most common one is MySQL. So MySQL is actually, like, there is MariaDB, which is a fork of MySQL. It's a relational database. So what is a relational database? It's a database where all the documents it's wrong to call it documents, but all the rows, all the records in the database have some kind of relation between one another. So basically what you are building when you're building a database is the schema that will see how those things relate one to each other. And this is very important, and in some application is kind of needed, because let's say that you are building an application for I don't know, to use to track the, it's the classic example, to track the votes at your university. Well, to track the votes at your university, you probably need a student, you probably need a course, and the student relates to the course, because it's probably a many-to-many relation, because one course has many students that attend, and one student have many courses. So this kind of relational database allow you to express in a very powerful way that a user has a set of courses, and you can query the database to actually get this relationship. So the MySQL one is one of the more popular, but there are a lot of them. The other very popular one, which I kind of consider a bit of MySQL plus, is Postgres. Like Postgres is also an SQL database, so a relational database, and I think it has a bit more powers. Like it has a lot of built-in ways of doing things. Like it has functions, like you can run code on a specific insert. You have I think that's also something that MySQL can do. But like Postgres, it's gaining in popularity. First because it's the main database under Supabase, which is like it's generally considered the main alternative to Firebase and stuff like that. So it's a backend as a service, and they are using Postgres as their own database under the hood. And this means that it's gaining popularity also because of Supabase. And again, it has a lot of very interesting features. Another kind of database that is also pretty cool is SQLite. I love SQLite. I started using it in some project of mine. And the power of SQLite is that SQLite actually is the original version of SQLite is, I think, a C++ library that allow you to basically use a single file as your database, which is super powerful if you are running your project in a long-running server, because like you don't have to worry about the database. The connection is super fast because you are literally just reading a file, so you don't have to go over the network. It's also very portable, like you can literally put it on a file and port it, and it's also surprisingly very capable. Like for example, Pocketbase, which is another like Supabase alternative, another Firebase alternative, it's using SQLite under the hood, so that it can basically ship as one giant binary, and it can handle like 10,000 user very easily. Like, and the reason why it's also very fast is also because the reason why it's so powerful is because it's very, very fast. By being so fast, consider like it's sync by default. So it's a database that is so fast that is not worried about being sync because like you don't have to await for SQLite, because it's so fast that you can just read from it and the user will not wait too much. So those, I think, are the main three databases. But like obviously those are not the only ones. For example, going over, there was a period where there was MongoDB, um, Firebird SQL. Never heard of it. There's also Captain Codeman is saying a lot of like FoxPro, Access, Sybase, lots of good option. So I don't actually know FoxPro or Sybase, but when I read Access, I know that I knew that he was joking. Access is the Windows database by default, and I actually had the pleasure of needed to study something like this because, like, at least in Europe, there is this like European computer driving license. So you basically have to make some exams just to demonstrate that you know how to use a computer, and it's comprising of all the basic things that you will do with a computer, like writing. Like it's kind of a shill to Microsoft because like it's basically like every module is a Microsoft program that you need to know. So it's a Word, like there is the Word exam, there is the Excel exam, there is the Access exam. So you actually have to build the database with Access to pass that exams. So yeah, something that we do in Italy. So I was talking about it. There was a period where like all of three options that I've just enumerated to you, like MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, those are all relational databases. And but there was a moment where everybody was freaking out for NoSQL database, which is basically documental databases. For example, Firebase is actually a documental database. MongoDB is a documental database. And the advantage of a documental database is that basically they have no shape. Like when you are building a relationship in SQL, MongoDB was one of the first that popularized NoSQL. Yeah. And basically, when you're building a relationship and a table in an SQL database, that is a very strong constraint. Like you can't put something different in that table. So if my user table has name, last name, and phone number, I actually have to specify that the name is a string and it's like max 255 character, that phone number is a number and it's like probably you will still store it as a string, but like so you have a very hard constraint. With NoSQL, the power was in the velocity because you could literally put whatever you want. Like it's basically a JSON file plus plus. Like it's basically a huge JSON file that you can just put stuff into, and it doesn't really matter if they are the same shape or not. So it was very fast for prototyping because if you are building your application, you may not know how's the shape of your application. You may not have complete clearance over what do you want, what do you need in your application. And that's why NoSQL was very popular. Also, I think it was popularized by Facebook because if I remember correctly, Facebook is actually using a NoSQL database under the hood. Which is kind of like, on one end, it kind of makes sense. It's schemaless. So this means that there's no global schema. But I think there's also a way to specify, to kind of enforce a schema. What I was saying is that Facebook was using a NoSQL database, if I remember correctly, which also is kind of, I don't know, because like at the end of the day, like it's based on relationship, but I guess like they build it in a way so that like all of your data, all the data that you really need to show is inside your document. And another thing that I wanted to talk about, because some people are actually using something similar, is actually Redis. Redis is even, Redis is actually an in-memory database by default. You can store it in, like you can technically say, okay, store also this information on the client. And Redis, which by the way, like the actual company Redis now, it has kind of gone bad. So I think there is now, I think it's called Valky, which is the alternative to Redis, built on top of Redis. Because basically what happened, okay, is that Redis changed his license, so that so Redis was initially open source, and it changed its license so that other services could not sell if they are building on Redis. And this was kind of a slap in the face to every other people that was using Redis. And so the Linux Foundation actually forked Redis in what, if I remember correctly, should be Valky. And they are basically maintaining now this version based on the last open source version of Redis. And the reason why it's called Valky or something similar, I don't know, let me see. Redis. Yeah, it's Valky.io. The reason why it's called Valky is because Redis is a key value database. So it's even simpler. Like it's just, you can add a key and you can set a value to that key. It's basically a giant object. Like it's not even a JSON file. It's even lower. Like it's just key and value. Obviously, you can do any data manipulation and stuff like that. So what I was saying is that, like with Redis, there are some people that are actually using Redis or Valky as their own data store, like their own database, because maybe they don't need so much data, and so they're just using a very, very fast. Because the advantage of something like Redis or Valky is that by default it's in memory and it's super duper fast to write to it and even to read from it. And so basically, like, you can just, if you don't have that much data, you can just use it as your database in the beginning. And obviously, don't forget, like, that if you really don't have much data and you just want to store something, there are databases. Because, for example, you could use local storage, which is something like, if you are building a web app, obviously, you could use a local storage, but there's also a database included in the browser, like, because the local storage has some limits. Also, like, it's still a key value pair, basically, but there is IndexedDB built into the browser. You can access it with JavaScript API, and it's a quite powerful database built in your browser. And if you want to use IndexedDB, I will suggest you to use it through some library, because the API is kind of rough. There is an API, there is a library from, I think it was either Surma or Jake Archibald, the guys behind HTTP 203. Yeah, exactly. That's like kind of where I was heading, because you can do local first using Electric SQL. So if you are doing some local first application, you most likely want to save the user information inside IndexedDB or local storage, probably IndexedDB with some library that help you manage the synchronization between your actual database and your local database. So it's very, like, this kind of DBs, like the index DBs, is pretty cool to do stuff if you know that you don't need synchronization on the client. Like even that, let's say that you just want to have a PWA on your phone because you want to keep your to-do list, for example. You could, in theory, just store everything in your IndexedDB and be done with it, because you don't need to sync it with the cloud. You don't need to have it portable. You just want like a PWA on your phone so that it's easier to do. And also, Captain Coleman is saying Redis is still free to use, just not sell as a service without a license. It's reasonable, I have to admit. Like, it's reasonable. Like, I'm not saying don't use Redis. I think the main thing was that they kind of did a rug pull. So that's why the open source community was a bit upset. Like, it's totally reasonable that they want to get some money if you are making money out of their product. But it was promised, like when the main creator of Redis was actually left the company, he actually got a promise that they will never change the license. So yeah, it's kind of a rug pull. I don't want to be too dramatic, but I think I understand why the Linux Foundation, which is very, very keen on open source. I mean, basically every web server is using Linux for free, and they don't want anything in behind. So yeah, they are very keen on open source. So I can get why they said, okay, let's fork Redis and let's maintain an actual open source version. So that was it. Again, I hope that this very general introduction to the world of databases actually helped you. I'm not really an expert, as you may tell, but I know things of too. So if you have any question, feel free to jump into our Discord. So svelte.dev/chat, and you can ask a question about the database, about OptimistiKit if you like it, about Svelte, about everything web development related. So even today, it was a chill day, and we still got 1 hour and 10 of stream. So very happy that you stayed up until today. I hope you up until now. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this 1 hour and 8 minutes of your Friday, and I'll see you guys next Friday.